Good morning, dear students. Today we'll explain conditional if or if conditional. This is the name of the lesson. Okay. As you see on the board, here we have type 1. Conditional if or if conditional is two sentences. The first sentence is started by if, and the second sentence is the result of the previous one. So usually we have two sentences. The previous one started by if, as I said, and we call it if clause. And the second one called the main clause. Here we'll start by the first type, as we have first type, second type, and third type. The first type, as you see, it's real situation, or it's about real situation that's likely to happen in the present or in the future. That's why the form, as you see from the examples, if Martin gets the job, he will move to Oxford. So the first verb here is present simple one, and the second one is in the future form. Okay, because it's a real present action. If she finishes her homework, she will go out. Number 3, if you eat a lot of sweets, what will happen? You will gain weight. If he doesn't pay the fine, he will go to prison. If you need help, come and see me. This is affirmative form. So the first type usually comes in if clause in the present simple form, and the main clause is the result, which we use the future form. Here we have the form and some examples. If clause, as I said, the first sentence which contains the word if, we call it if clause. Here we have the present simple form, which is he, she, it, follows by a verb and by s or es or ies. Or, of course, the subject pronoun, if it's I or we or they, we don't add s for the verb. We keep the verb in the infinitive form. Here, the future form, in the main clause, we put will plus the infinitive. Example number 1. We must hurry or we will miss the bus. Rewrite using if. We must hurry or we will miss the bus. We'll start by if at the beginning of the sentence. If we don't hurry, what will happen? We will miss the bus. So we change the sentence here and we use the present form, but in the negative form. Because if we don't hurry, what will happen? What will be the result? We will miss the bus. The second one. Don't park here without getting a ticket. This is a present case. Don't park here without getting a ticket. Rewrite using if. The same. If she gets a ticket, she will park here. If she gets a ticket, what will happen? She will be allowed to park here. As you see, we put a comma between the if clause and the main clause to separate the two sentences. But if we put if in the middle of the sentence, as we start by this, if we said she will park here, if she gets a ticket, of course, we have to omit the commas. Now move to the second type. The second type differs a little bit from the first one. The second type, we use it to express unreal action or unreal present, refers to imaginary situation. Why we call it unreal? We call it unreal because it speaks about something that we imagine it. Imaginary situation or a wish, which is, as we see, situation unlikely to happen in the future. Also, we use it to give advice. Let's start to explain this at first. Unreal present refers to imaginary situation, like when I say, if I were a bird, I would fly. This is an imaginary situation because, of course, I won't be a bird and I'm not a bird. This is imaginary situation. And the second one, situation unlikely to happen in the future or in the present time. Like if I had money, I would buy a car. Actually, I don't have money. That's why I put if and followed by a past verb. If I were a millionaire, I would buy this villa. So this is also a situation which is unlikely to happen in the present time or in the future. And the last usages here is for giving advice. You will see the examples. The first one, if I were a bird, I would fly. As I said, this is an imaginary situation as I am not a bird. So that's why we put were. Usually we say I was. But in this case, I put I were because I'm expressing something which is impossible or which is imaginary. That's why we usually use were, not was. If I had money, I would buy a new car. This is called unlikely to happen situation, unlikely to happen in the future or the present time. If I had money, I would buy a new car, but I don't have money. So in the time being, I won't buy the car. I wouldn't buy the car. If I were you, I would see a doctor. This is giving advice. If I were in your situation, if I were in your shoes, we used to say, if I were you, I would see a doctor. So we use this type, which is the second one. We use it for giving advice. This is the rule. If clause should contain a past verb and the main clause would plus infinitive instead of will in the first type. The first type, if present simple, the main clause if plus a present simple tense. If clause, the main clause will plus infinitive. Second type, past simple tense and would plus infinitive. Number one, I want to buy a car, but I can't afford. Rewrite using if. I want to buy a car, but I can't afford. This is a situation that's impossible to happen in the time being. So I have to add if at the beginning. If I had money, I would buy a car. It's a wish. The second time, you should take a passport. Should here refers to advice because we usually use should to give advice. You should eat healthy food. You should sleep early. So if you find should, you have to understand that this is a piece of advice and I have to use if using the second type. As you see, if I were you, I would take a passport. If I were you, I would take a passport. Take infinitive because after the modal verb would, there should be an infinitive form. Number 3, you had better talk to your parents about your problems. This is also a piece of advice. So by using should or by using had better, this is considered a piece of advice. You had better study well. You had better eat healthy food. It's the same as you should. So the answer will, if I were you, I would talk to my parents. Number 4, why don't you see a doctor? This is another form of giving advice. Why don't you go out early? Why don't you sleep early? Why don't you study your lessons? So if I were you, I would see a doctor. So this is the second type. We usually use it for imaginary situation and for giving advice or any situation which is impossible to happen in the time being or in the present time. Now, we will go to the third type. The third type, totally different from the second and the first. The third type, usually we use it to express regretment or to criticize, to criticism. The third type, we call it unreal situations in the past. Why we call it unreal past? Because something happened and finished, and after the result of the action happened also, I regretted doing it. That's why I use the past perfect, not the past simple. So here, unreal situations in the past for actions that did not happen or to express criticism or regret. Action did not happen, happened, and the result didn't happen. Okay, like this. I had studied harder. If I had studied harder, I would have passed the exam. If I had studied harder, this means that I didn't study harder and I didn't pass. That's why I use if. If I had studied harder, I would have passed. So if I say if I had studied harder, this means that I didn't study. I didn't study well. Okay, so he didn't study and he didn't pass. So he regretted this. That's why we use the if conditional in this case. So we use the third type to express regretment or, as I said, criticism, to criticize somebody. The second example here, if he hadn't been acting so foolishly, he wouldn't have been punished. This is kind of criticism. Why? Because he had been acting so foolishly. He acted foolishly. And what was the result? He had been punished. So here, if he hadn't been acting so foolishly like this, he wouldn't have been punished. But it seems that he had been punished. So he acted foolishly, so he was punished. So we are criticizing him. By using if here, we are criticizing this person. Okay? So the form here, this is very important to memorize. If clause, past perfect. What does it mean by past perfect? Past perfect means had plus the PP form of the verb. So the if clause should contain had plus PP. The main clause, we separated by a comma, as you see, and then the main clause. We have to add would plus have plus the PP form of the verb. And this have, it could never be changed to has. Okay? Usually we put have because after would, after any of the modal verb, we should put infinitive form. And the infinitive form here is have. So don't you ever change have to be has or had. Usually it's have. Keep it as it is. You should memorize the form. Past perfect and the main clause would, have, and PP. Example number 1. She was lazy. What's the result of this? She failed her exams. Rewrite using if conditional. As you see, we put if at the beginning. If she hadn't been lazy, we change the sentence from affirmative to the negative form. Why we change it to negative? Because this is what had happened. Okay, and we regretted this. That's why we should put it in the negation, in the negative form. She was lazy. So we wish, or we say that if she hadn't been lazy, she wouldn't have failed. She wouldn't have failed. Okay, but what had happened? That she was lazy and she failed. Okay, so when I ask you to rewrite using if conditional and the sentence is already written in the past, and this is kind of regretment or kind of criticism, you have to use the third type by changing the verb from affirmative to negative. It's always happened. If she hadn't been lazy, she wouldn't have failed the exam. The second example, my father didn't earn much money, so life wasn't easy. My father didn't earn much money, so life wasn't easy. Rewrite using if. If you put if at the beginning, okay, the main clause as you see, the if clause, started by had. If my father had earned much money, what would happen? Life would have been easy. But actually my father didn't earn much money and life wasn't easy. So we change the negative to be an affirmative form. And of course we use the past perfect as the rules said here. And the main clause would plus have plus PP form. Okay? Another one. Debbie didn't lock her bike. So what was the result? It got stolen. Somebody stole the bike. Okay? So if Debbie had locked, she didn't lock. So we change it to the perfect form and we add we omit the negation. As I said, negative, affirmative, affirmative, negative. So if Debbie had locked, she didn't lock. So we said if she had locked her bike, it wouldn't have got stolen. The bike wouldn't have got stolen. Would have, and the PP form for get, it's got, got. Another one, Mary went to bed late. So she overslept. This was the result. She went to bed late, so she overslept. If Mary hadn't gone to bed late, of course you see, this is affirmative in the past. We change it to past perfect and we put not to change the sentence to be a negative sentence. If Mary hadn't gone to bed, she wouldn't have overslept. Okay, we're criticizing her because she went to bed late, and what was the result? She overslept. So the third type usually go for criticism, or as I said, regretment, when you regret something. I didn't study well, so I failed. So if I had studied well, I wouldn't have failed the exam. Thank you so much for listening, and have a nice day.